Kamen Rider Zeztz episode 29 is not doing a good job of convincing me that Catastrom is actually a problem. We see in episode 28 that Sieg is criticizing Catastrom, and he's talking about basically how bad it is. And then we see in this episode, again, big spoilers if you haven't watched it already, which you should have, because this is a full-on analysis of it. You need to have that context. We see him kind of mocking Baku for using it, and kind of saying, well, whatever. He's taunting him as he's using it and saying that's a bad idea, basically. And he thinks that he thinks he's making a mistake. He is making a mistake factually based on what we know is happening. And I'll just stop dancing around it. Sieg has altered the dream, the nightmare, to make it so that Minami, who's the dreamer, is actually been turned into a nightmare somehow. I don't know how he can do that, but he can. He absorbed nightmares, so he's the Nightmare Rider. Therefore, it stands to reason that he has a bunch of nightmare powers, which we clearly see he does. No plates. Okay. So anyway, the issue for me is that Catastrom is not really clearly a villainous power or an evil power, despite the fact that it's the power of nightmares. Why do I say that? There's a couple reasons. One, Nox, who's very cagey about using the power of nightmares and says how bad it is and how you'll lose yourself to it, he uses the power of nightmares. The lady is using the power of nightmares. Nem is a nightmare baby. So she is, alive by nightmare power, and she seems to be fine. Also, within the dreams, Baku, in addition to just using the, transformation powers, he's also manipulating the dreams, the nightmares, by ripping open spaces and hiding through them and jumping through them and things like that. So he's not opposed to using the dream power. And I don't know what distinction there is between dream power and nightmare power that has not been made clear in the show at all. And I don't really know why that's being withheld from us, but it is. And I find that a little frustrating because there's this whole argument going on that Baku is too close to the edge and he's too close to the darkness and it's going to consume him, body and soul. And I just find that kind of to be a very poorly funded claim or founded claim, because there's really no proof to it. But MJ, what are you talking about? This episode, Baku almost killed his sister because of the power of Catastrom. Yes, you could say that's true, but you would be lying, because this important factor that you're leaving out, imaginary person, which is that Baku wasn't trying to kill Minami. Baku was trying to kill this cat nightmare because it was a threat. In every other situation Baku has faced, the solution to everybody's problems has been to fight and kill a nightmare. When your only weapon is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, in this case, the only things that he's been encountering are nails, and he's hammering those nails, and there's been nothing wrong with that this entire show. So for now, the show to come along and say, oh no, Baku, how dare you? How could you do this? It's so horrible. It doesn't make any sense. It's not convincing me. It's not making a winning argument. And there's really nothing compelling to me about the idea that Baku is evil or he's on the edge of being evil because he's using this nightmare power, because everybody's using the nightmare power. That is the conceit of the show. Now, is the conceit of the show that all use of power is bad or evil or whatever? I don't know. Maybe it is. That doesn't feel like something that Yu Takahashi would write, but maybe that's what he's going with for now. Or maybe that's just a temporary angle. Maybe that's a temporary version of things. But that's an incomplete, that's a morally failed ideology. If you think that power is evil, therefore wielding power is evil, therefore anybody who wields power is evil, you are dramatically flawed. Because in the real world, you need power to do certain things, and you need power to, at minimum, protect the weak. Well, no. At minimum, you need power to survive. What do I mean by that? I mean you need to get power from the sun, power from the food that you eat, power from the water that you drink, in order to sustain your body so that you can have a positive effect on the world. So I'm not a proponent of power for power's sake, but I am a proponent for, if you want to do anything, the first order thing you need to do is meet, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which one of them is, having sustenance and having the wherewithal to even be alive. So that's a little bit of a philosophical approach to the question, but at the same time, it's not. I think it's very fair to raise that as part of the equation, because you can't really just accuse Baku of being a bad actor for using the power of Catastrom, the most potent power he has to save people, because his intentions are good. Well, MJ, isn't the road to hell paved with good intentions? First of all, I don't know who said that. Second of all, I don't know that it's actually true. Third of all, it reminds me of a C.S. Lewis quote, which kind of leans into that thinking and would seem to go against my argument, that the most dangerous people are the busybodies and moralizers who say that they are going to make you good, make you correct, make you noble, make you do things the way that you should do, because they will never tire of trying to force their ideology on you and trying to force their way of living on you. And that's a bad thing, because just they think they're noble, so therefore any resistance they meet, they reject, because they have to do what's right. They have to save you. And this doesn't make sense, but it does. It's almost like they're Pepe Le Pew, coming after the skunk who he thinks is a cat, because from what he sees, from his skewed perspective, this is the right thing to do, to glom onto this other individual, and whatever. That was kind of weird, but it works. It works. But anyway, besides that, spoilers for the coming up part of the show. It definitely seems like we're going to have a purified form of Catastrom, which would seem to support my argument that the power of Catastrom is not uniquely evil, and that power is not uniquely evil. It's how it's used, it's how it's utilized, and it's the context that it exists in that matters more than anything, or that matters greatly. That matters greatly, I would say. So the show is already. The toy sales are tipping their hands, and the show preview is already showing that this question of power is not so easily dealt with, and there is nuance to it. Now, am I making a false argument, a specious argument, in saying that, I disagree, that, they're not doing a good job of showing how Catastrophe is so bad? I don't think I'm making an insincere argument. I think I'm making a decent argument that if you're going to make this part of your show, this big climactic thing, where you are trying to prove this point or have your character go through this journey, then you need to make the journey believable, and you need to make it make sense by structuring it well and not leaving the audience with all these questions. Now, the audience is supposed to be, little kids for the most part, not adult men who are interested in, who've read, hundreds of books and who are interested in writing books and, really thinking about stories and things like that. I'll grant you that, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that the stories should be, that the way you're structuring it should be sloppy or not well done. That, I would argue, kind of leads to the argument that you should do an even better job of making the argument and really, making the case. Because you can either straw man the argument, which I think is kind of what they're doing here, or you can steel man the argument where you're making it as strong as possible, and which I don't think they're doing here, and I'm not quite sure why. I think steel manning the argument would make it even more compelling and even more impactful, but maybe it's just not necessary for, selling toys to kids. I'm not 100% sure. And I don't really, that's really high heat. No wonder. I don't really accept the cop-out that, this is just for kids, so it doesn't really matter, how it's done or the level that it's executed at, because I think it does matter, and I think it does matter, and it needs to be done better. That's my bottom line. And Takahashi's dragging here and not doing a very good job of this. I would think he would use Sieg in a more interesting way to raise the question of power, and maybe that's what he's going to do after Baku makes this breakthrough in revelation and transforms Catastrophe into something more palatable, into something more in control. But I don't really know. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen what's coming next, and I've only seen little preview type things, so I can't really speak to what's going to happen. But I have the feeling that that's exactly what's going to happen, is that we're going to get to see it redeemed and fixed and properly oriented. And I'm not against that. I'm definitely for it. It's just, again, like I said before, and I don't want to have to keep repeating myself. It's just the argument's being done in a sloppy way that I don't appreciate. So that's my problem. You can do better, and you should do better, and we deserve better. But yeah, you're not doing the greatest job, Takahashi, here with making this argument and making this whole Catastrom arc work for me, and really for anybody, I would say. So that's what I have to say about it. I would love to hear what you have to say about this, what your thoughts are on this episode, and how it's fitting into the story overall, how it's fitting the Catastrom arc, so to speak, and what else you think is coming down, and if you're still liking this, or if you're like me, getting a little fed up with how things are being handled and approached here, please drop a comment, let me know what you think, and then also check the pinned comment for more, including my bonus content, which I hope to put there, and also links to my playlist for the rest of my Zeztz coverage, as well as my other Henshin Inspection Tokusatsu analysis. Until next time, folks, this is MJ with Henshin Inspection, signing out.